The protection of Australia and Australians is one of the primary functions of the federal government. The job of safeguarding our borders falls to the Home Affairs Department, but it's failing badly. Tonight, alarming home truths about threats to our safety. They're spelled out in the findings of a report the Minister, Claire O'Neill, received 4 months ago, but won't release publicly. However, in this joint investigation with the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, we will. When Victorian police raided this Melbourne home in April 2018, they instantly knew they were dealing with serious organised crime. Inside, they found dozens of carefully cultivated cannabis plants, a lucrative illegal operation that was being looked after by Albert Bieber. To protect his investment, this ruthless Albanian gangster had installed a silent alarm to warn of intruders. And just after midnight, on the 17th of April, it was triggered by Andrew Tamayan. As the 28-year-old Melbourne carpenter snuck through the house, he had no idea Albert Bieber was racing towards him with a loaded gun. 15 minutes later, he was dead. What happened here might seem like an isolated murder and drugs case. But Albert Bieber wasn't only running crop houses. He was part of an Albanian mafia syndicate, one of many flourishing around the country. What's worse, he entered Australia illegally because our border security system failed. His arrest would reveal a much deeper problem, one that goes all the way to Canberra. As you'll see tonight, the government department designed to keep us safe from people like Bieber isn't doing its job. For all we've been told about our tough border security, Albert Bieber had no trouble getting into Australia. He had a fake Greek passport, so in 2013 he simply flew to Melbourne Airport and passed through immigration, joining hundreds of other Albanian criminals who have rorted our migration system to build a sprawling criminal empire. Have they become somewhat experts in the movement of people into this country to engage in crime?
Yes, my understanding is that they've become adept to the processes and working around processes to bring people into this country. They've got the facilitators, professional facilitators to assist them, whether it's through visa migration issues, legal or other means. They're very adept and continue to work to get their people they want into this country to assist them in their enterprises.
It's clearly an issue for you, isn't it? The influx of people across the border.
Yes, it is.
When our border security system fails, Victorian Police Commander Paul O'Halloran and his team have to clean up the mess.
If that changes, we'll reassess.
Over the last few years, they've been kept busy by an explosion of crime carried out by organised Albanian gangs. Why has Australia become such a desirable marketplace for Albanian organised crime groups overseas sending their people here?
Well, primarily we're a very strong market and attractive market for drugs.
What are we talking about in respect of the funds being generated by Albanian organised crime?
There's multiple millions of dollars to be made.
The ruthless pursuit of that kind of money has seen Albanian mafia gangs flourish all over the world. And nowhere have they been more successful than in the UK, where they play up to their reputation as feared gangsters on social media. Their real aim, though, is controlling the drug market, and they're happy to use extreme violence to achieve it.
What they've proven over the last couple of decades is that once they're established, they'll grow, and once they grow, they become quite formidable.
Tony Sagers is a former high-ranking officer at the National Crime Agency in Britain. He now briefs policing agencies all over the world about the threat posed by the Albanian mafia. We've uncovered the fact that Albanian organised criminals have become very, very proficient at exploiting gaping holes in Australia's border security, our visa systems. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me when I hear that they've exploited any sort of immigration or controls system. So they will have gone online, they would have researched how Australia prevents the wrong people from getting in. They will have looked at what the porous opportunities are to break through that otherwise quite sort of strong process.
Australian police believe Albanian mafia figures have identified our country as a soft target with easily breached borders. Over the last decade, their crime empires here have grown so big they're challenging our most dangerous criminals for control of the cocaine trade. Secret policing intelligence links the Albanian mafia to large-scale drug importations and to multiple underworld shootings.
Authority, repercussions didn't seem to put them off at all. This is an organisation or a particular group or ethnic group that are prepared to kill out and wipe out families, not just to one individual. And that's what makes them so feared.
Few, if any, criminals worry former homicide detective Charlie Bazina as much as the Albanian gangs.
I'd put them probably above the mafia and other organised groups because they bring a different element to the game. At the end of the day, we don't want that crime within our community in Australia, and it's how do we keep them out? It's a matter of who's protecting us, the Australian community.
It should be Home Affairs, but it has failed to stop the Albanian mafia and other crime groups from entering the country. Secret intelligence reports have been circulating within the department for years, warning that Albanian crooks are rorting our visa system. Some of these reports have called for reform, but it hasn't been implemented, making it easier for criminals like Albert Bieber to enter the country and stay here. Bieber's story is as astonishing as it is alarming. After arriving on a fake passport in 2013, he applied for a tourist visa twice. When both were rejected, he engaged in a sham marriage to get a partner visa. At every turn, Bieber was found to be fraudulent. Still, he was given multiple temporary visas over 5 years. He was still gaming the migration system in 2018, when he shot dead Melbourne man Andrew Tamayan. You spent your career dealing with grieving families. For Andrew Tamayan's family to know that his killer was on a series of bridging visas and had stayed in the country over many years, how would that affect them?
Well, it would affect them greatly because it's preventable. It was preventable.
But Albert wasn't the only member of the Bieber family posing a grave danger to our community. His brother, drug trafficker Diego, was also rorting Australia's visa system. And when Albert was charged with murder, Diego embarked on a terrifying campaign, stalking and intimidating the female detective who headed up the homicide investigation.
It was just a very, very sophisticated, targeted attack upon a quality-serving police officer.
The impact on the member, can you tell me about that?
Look, it was obviously distressing.
In April 2022, Diego Bieber pleaded guilty to his crimes and should have been thrown into immigration detention immediately. Instead, he remained free in our community for over a year. And it wasn't until we began asking questions a few weeks ago, his visa was finally cancelled by Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill. Why is the system so open to exploitation?
I think we've taken our eye off the ball. I think we've become so infatuated with boats that we've decided that's the only way the system can be exploited. We know that to be just absolute rubbish. It's far easier to exploit the visa system on aeroplanes and through the system itself than to bring in people on boats.
Abul Rizvi is a former Deputy Secretary of the Department of Immigration. I've been briefed confidentially by policing officials about the way Albanian organised criminals have been coming in large numbers by rorting the visa system. Where should responsibility for this lie?
Well, certainly the entry of overseas criminals to Australia is first and foremost the responsibility of Home Affairs. If that sort of operation has actually increased under Home Affairs, one would have to say something's gone seriously wrong.
No one would agree more than Police Commander Paul O'Halloran. Would it be much easier for Victoria Police if they were stopped at the border?
Oh, certainly if they were identified as coming in illegally, that would certainly be of great assistance. Anything that would prevent criminals and organised criminals manipulating immigration systems would be of use.
A Home Affairs spokesperson has provided a written response to the allegations we're making tonight, which you can read on our website. But, as you'll see, Albanian gangs are only the start of the department's failings. It's bad enough that ruthless Albanian crime gangs have been exploiting Australia's weak border security. But the failings of the Home Affairs Department go much further. They're outlined in a report by ex-police chief Christine Nixon, who was asked to investigate how our visa system is being manipulated by overseas organised criminals. Nixon handed her findings to the Minister, Claire O'Neill, 4 months ago, but so far they haven't been released publicly. We can reveal, though, the embarrassing home truths keep coming, including extraordinary evidence of migration agents who've helped bring slaves to Australia. Need a human slave? Look no further than the instant messaging app WeChat, where you'll find plenty of unscrupulous employers in Australia connecting with vulnerable workers in China.
They're luring people to Australia.
I would say so, yes.
This particular chat is full, and with every scroll, immigration lawyer Sean Dong sees a scam.
Without English, there's no way to get permanent residency in the metropolitan cities like Sydney.
Like the kind that lured Henry Chi to Australia.
These are like online recruiting grounds for people who might end up just like Henry, like a slave.
Definitely, yes.
Before Henry became a client, Sean thought he had seen and heard it all.
Migration conferences, we always hear topic about modern slavery. I didn't really understand that actually exists until he told me the story. I was shocked how he was treated.
Do you think he was treated like a slave?
I think, yes. He was controlled. He had no freedom. He couldn't do whatever he wanted. That's slavery to me.
Henry certainly didn't sign up to be a slave. He thought he was leaving China and coming to Melbourne for an honest job as a car tinter. How wrong he was. You came to Australia with a dream.
I didn't have much dream, I just wanted to live.
And what was life like in the end?
It was terrible. I wish I hadn't come out.
He didn't know it at the time, but he'd fallen for a human slavery scam. Instead of a working visa, Henry's boss had rorted the system and got him here on a false student visa. No questions were ever asked. Henry was never going to study. He was put to work in a factory. Henry's false student visa was arranged by the biggest Chinese migration agent in the country, New Stars. It has a federal government licence to apply for visas. It has done so for more than 30,000 people. In Henry's case, New Stars applied for a student visa without ever having met him, seemingly confident the scam would not be uncovered by Home Affairs. And it was right. Our visa system is being easily exploited.
The whole thing was fraud. He couldn't possibly meet the English requirement of the school. He speaks almost zero English, just simply yes or no. And he should never been offered a place in a school. And because of that, he shouldn't have gotten a visa.
The entity that got him his visa is a federal government licensed migration agent.
Yes, from the information we have.
They must have been in on this criminal conduct, this lie, this fraud.
I can't comment how much they know, but from what Henry told me is that he didn't know who his agent was. And to me, that's obviously a representation issue. He wasn't properly represented.
Henry's employer was ruthless in his exploitation of his young worker. He was paid a pittance, about $5 an hour, to work up to 16 hours every day at the car tinting factory. He lived where he worked and ate leftovers brought to him by his boss. Escape wasn't an option. Did you feel trapped?
Yes.
Why?
I cannot get away from them. I didn't know how to. And when I expressed my intention to get away from them, they took away my passport, so I couldn't.
And why did they do that?
They wanted me to keep working for them.
Why isn't the Department of Home Affairs, the border security system, picking up on this seemingly blatant rorting?
From a practitioner's perspective view, it's because the number, the quantity, and the resources are imbalanced.
You mean to say there's so many people coming in on dodgy visas?
On dodgy visas.
And not enough resources to stop or police that?
Correct.
If people are conducting brazen rorting of our system, what does it say about the system itself and those enforcing the laws, the rules around it?
Well, either the enforcement of those rules is given inadequate priority or there isn't enough resources to deal with those. It could be a combination of the two.
Abul Rizvi is a former senior public servant who was stunned by the erosion of the border security system.
What the Australian people now, I think, deserve is a clear plan on how we're going to deal with the problem.
The price of inaction?
Oh, the price of inaction is the problem just keeps growing. The number of exploited people keeps growing and the number of unscrupulous operators operating brazenly keeps growing.
When you were at your very lowest, tell me, what was it like? When your mental health was at its very lowest?
At my lowest, I couldn't express my feelings, so I punched the wall, and I didn't know what to do, just punching the wall.
Is it a way that any human being should be treated?
No. No human being should be treated. Everyone deserves basic human rights. I think that's the bottom line of our society.
But as you'll see, it seems to be something the Department of Home Affairs isn't concerned about. When it comes to Australia's border security, even the supposed successes of the Home Affairs Department are mired in controversy and fiasco. Over 20 years, successive Australian governments claimed that $10 billion funnelled into the offshore processing of asylum seekers in Papua New Guinea and Nauru was money well spent. But as you're about to see, a significant chunk of those taxpayer funds was used for highly questionable deals.
What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom!
It was one of the most contentious policies in modern Australian history.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Intercepting asylum seekers headed our way and sending them to offshore detention. The so-called Pacific solution did stop the boats, but at a huge cost. Australia was effectively held to ransom by greedy politicians from Papua New Guinea and Nauru.
There is absolutely no way that Canberra did not see the wrongs in what was happening. To me, they just turned a blind eye.
We've concealed this man's identity to protect him. He's a former Nauruan official who says his colleagues saw Australia's offshore processing program as an opportunity to strike it rich.
Were you sus that there were funny deals involving politicians and offshore processing?
Yes, we suspected that there were funny deals involving politicians behind the scenes. Yes, I'm outraged.
Australia needed Nauru and Papua New Guinea's cooperation for the Pacific solution to succeed, and local politicians were quick to leverage their power. And so began years of suspect payments for dodgy deals, financed by the Australian taxpayer and overseen by the Department of Home Affairs.
Canberra was conveniently overlooking the risk of corruption with how the arrangement was being set up.
They wanted to run and maintain offshore processing at all costs, even if it meant doing business deals with the politicians on Nauru.
It would appear to be that was the case.
In Nauru, many powerful officials made a fortune. One of them was Lionel Langamia. He was in charge of offshore processing and later became the country's president. But that didn't stop Home Affairs and its lead contractors from giving him a second job, trucking water. For that deal, his company was paid millions in Aussie taxpayer dollars.
Australia should have been aware of it. Australia should have been on top of it. Should not have allowed it, because they held the the purse, so to speak, to all this activity. And it was allowed to happen under their watch.
On behalf of the Republic of Nauru,
we are not suggesting Angamia is corrupt, but these payments should have been scrutinised by Home Affairs. It gets worse. Leaked files show at least 11 other Home Affairs approved subcontracts went to high-ranking Nauruan officials, and some of these involved blatant inflating of prices. A money trail also shows suspected kickbacks funded by Aussie taxpayers to David Adiak, politician already facing serious corruption allegations.
What sort of alarm bells ring in your head when it's revealed a subcontractor is actually a politically exposed person, a senior official or a politician?
Firstly, conflicts of interest.
Clancy Moore is the CEO of Transparency International.
The fact that that politician could use their connections to wield influence over policy. Also, the risks of money laundering, particularly in Nauru. Now, Nauru has no controls around anti-money laundering laws. This means the risks of politicians dealing with millions of dollars in contracts are very high for money laundering as well, so the risks are high.
Have you ever seen a president put on the books?
Not in my time, no.
What does it say to you?
It's unbelievable, to be honest. It's deeply shocking and, you know, it raises many questions. Why did the department allow these payments to go through? Who knew about these payments and how high in the department did it go?
2,200 kilometres west of Nauru, the questionable splashing of cash was just as blatant in Papua New Guinea.
Senior people knew that there was approaches to pay bribes.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's 100% do we pass on that information.
Ian Stewart's company, Paladin, was paid about $500 million to manage security at the Manus Island Detention Centre. But he says doing business in PNG came at a cost. Tonight, he comes clean, exposing a bribery scandal which he claims Home Affairs knew about and even sanctioned.
Well, so we were approached by a number of individuals. They could offer to assist us, and in return, issues we're having around work permits or other issues in the contract would potentially go away, was the offer.
Just to get this really clear, I'm not trying to use sensational language here. You're saying you are offered help in return for a payment. That's a bribe. It's a quid pro quo, yeah?
I don't know what the definition of bribe in terms of...
I'll tell you what a definition of a bribe is giving you a business advantage in return for a payment that is not appropriately due.
Yeah, so I think, I guess you could term it in that sense. They were definitely asking for payments in return to assist us.
When Paladin first arrived at Manus in 2017, Ian says he pushed back against the PNG officials encouraging corruption, even when pressure came from an unexpected quarter.
One of the Home Affairs officials rang me and we met at a hotel in Port Moresby, and he basically said to me, "Why won't you just subcontract one of their subcontractors?" And I said, "Because I believe them to be corrupt and I'll never subcontract him." He said, "It would be just easier if you did." I said, "No."
But the requests for bribes became so frequent, not only did Ian start recording them,
Well, I'm only looking up on you if you are willing to help me.
He says Paladin also gave in, paying kickbacks to obtain visas and work permits for its staff.
How much are we talking?
It was over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
And more than one payment. We did get work permits and visas that we hadn't been able to get for months before. So, I would consider that was a bribe.
In fact, records we have seen reveal bribes in excess of $3 million. Those payments, and others linked to Nauru, are now being investigated by the Australian Federal Police. But Stewart insists Home Affairs turned a blind eye when he flagged corruption concerns.
The advice I received was that they were happy with the email at Home Affairs, but they would prefer a phone call.
And what did you take that to mean?
Well, I took that to mean that they don't really want to receive corruption reports because it's inconvenient.
The inconvenient truth is that the Home Affairs Department has significant problems that need urgent attention. You'd think the first step might be to confront them, but when we asked Minister Claire O'Neill for an interview, she said no. As for the report detailing the weaknesses in Australia's border security that the government won't release, well, we've now posted it on our website. You can also read more of my investigation in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Hello, I'm Nick McKenzie. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. Don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.